I can still hear the soft clatter of forks and spoons and the quiet laughs from that Christmas dinner. The old fireplace in my grandparents' country house in Vermont made long, dancing shadows across everyone's faces. Some of them hadn't been here in almost 5 years, even though the house was just down the hill from our family's insurance office. The smell of pine and cinnamon filled the room, mixing with the sweet aroma of Grandma's famous pie. Everything felt cozy, yet strange at the same time, like stepping into a storybook where the characters never quite noticed you were part of the story. "Lyra, tell everyone your exciting news," my cousin Celera shouted suddenly, her voice ringing across the room. I looked up, bracing myself. Celera was sitting there in her crisp navy jacket, the kind that made her look like she belonged in a magazine. Her engagement ring sparkled in the soft light from the fireplace, catching everyone's attention. She had that proud, slightly smug smile she always got when she wanted to show off. "I got promoted to regional director," she announced, her grin wide and confident. She was the youngest person in the company's 112-year history to get the job. The table erupted with cheers and applause. Grandpa beamed with pride, his glasses catching the firelight. Grandma dabbed her eyes with her napkin, whispering softly to herself. Uncle Oberon raised his glass high. "To Celera Winslow, keeping the family's name strong." I took a small sip of cider and let my eyes wander around the table. I thought about all the business deals waiting for me at my apartment. Nobody here knew about those. To them, I was just Lyra Sterling, the quirky cousin who liked cooking and coffee more than real work. But really, I was far busier than anyone imagined. "And you, Lyra? How's your little cafe?" Aunt Vionette asked with her syrupy sweet voice, a mixture of pity and judgment. "Still running that little place?" I smiled lightly. "Yes, it's called the Golden Elm Bistro. And yes, I'm still flipping pancakes." Celera chuckled, trading smirks with our cousin Callum. "You know, the office could always use another sales assistant if you want something more stable," she said with a teasing grin. I toyed with my fork, thinking about the client meeting I had that afternoon, the one where I secured a 5-year catering contract with the biggest ski resort chain in the region. That deal was worth far more than Solara's yearly commission. But of course, nobody at this table knew that. "Not yet. The bistro keeps me busy enough," I said casually, letting it sound like a simple excuse. Grandpa teased me, half joking. "Busy enough to pay for heating this place?" I almost laughed. If only they knew. I had bought the entire property the bistro sat on, plus 3 more buildings on the same block. "I'll get by," I said simply. Celera immediately dove into a long story about her latest multi-million-dollar insurance deal. The family listened intently, just like they always did. Celera, the golden child, had followed every rule. Ivy League executive training programs straight into the family business. And me, I had gone to culinary school at 22 and turned a rundown old tavern into a booming destination. Now, the bistro made more money in a few months than their entire agency did in a year. But they had no idea. "I just wrapped up the Sterling Hotel contract," Celera continued, swirling her wine. "You should have seen their legal team panic when I pointed out the flaw in their liability clause. Mr. Fairchild was so impressed. He's moving all his accounts to our agency now." I kept my face carefully blank at the mention of Magnus Fairchild. If Celera only knew who really owned most of those resort properties through shell companies I managed, she would have been shocked. I didn't get it. How could someone so careful, so bright, never notice the quiet power that moved behind the scenes? Later, Grandma whispered to me while I dried dishes. She caught me by the sink, her wrinkled hands brushing mine. "You're sharp, Lyra. You could have had everything Celera has. Why waste your talents on a little dinner?" I polished a heavy serving plate, thinking about my 9 a.m. conference calls with bank managers from 2 different states. "Not everyone dreams of insurance, Grandma," I said calmly. But she insisted. "Look at Celera. The custom suits, the new car, that gorgeous penthouse condo. Don't you want real success?" I thought about my own apartment, the one I closed on last month under my investment firm's name. Top floor, better views, fully paid. "I'm happy with my choices," I said simply. Grandma sighed, frustration etched across her face. "I just worry about your future. The restaurant business is so risky. What if you want a family someday? How will you support them?" I almost laughed. She didn't know. My real estate empire was growing fast. My silent partnerships, my diversified stock portfolio, the bistro was only step 1, a door into a world they could never imagine. Later that evening, as the family bundled up to leave, Celera pulled me aside by the old oak coat rack. "Hey, I meant it about the agency," she said, resting her manicured hand on my arm. Uncle Oberon would set you up in underwriting. You could work your way up fast. Thanks, I said lightly, shrugging her off. But I'm exactly where I want to be. Solara's smile faltered. Lyra, seriously. You can't run a breakfast place forever. Don't you want to be someone? If only she knew. I was already someone. Bigger than any of them had dreamed. Tomorrow will prove it. I glanced at my watch. Got to go. Early tomorrow. Right, she said, smirking. Those waffles won't flip themselves. I drove back to town to the real headquarters, hidden in plain sight right above the Golden Elm Bistro. While my family thought I spent my days pouring syrup and wiping tables, I had built an empire in secret. The bistro was just the storefront, the part people could see and point at. Behind it stretched a vast network of real estate acquisitions, strategic investments, and quietly signed contracts that would soon reshape our little mountain town. Unlocking the private door tucked behind the pastry kitchen, I climbed the stairs to my real office. It was sleek and sunlit, outfitted with nothing but essentials. I slid into my leather chair and opened the folder labeled Fairchild Holdings. Tomorrow morning, Magnus Fairchild wouldn't be meeting with Celera at some high-rise agency office. He'd be meeting with me in my bistro. For years, he had helped me discreetly acquire properties through various shell companies, never revealing to his own team or my family who the true buyer was. I pulled out the final contract, the one consolidating all my holdings into a single entity, Winslow Ridge Management. The name held just enough family irony to make me smirk. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Nix. Dinner was fun. FYI, Mr. Fairchild might pop into your cafe tomorrow. Don't mess it up. He's very important to the agency. I set the phone down without replying. My smile widened. More surprises were coming. The paperwork was simple. All the companies I'd created over the past 5 years would merge under Winslow Ridge. That transfer would make me the largest landowner between Montpelier and Burlington, all without ever stepping into a courtroom. As I double-checked the final signatures, I thought about Solara's cocky grin at dinner, Grandma's worried whispers, Uncle Oberon's patronizing jokes. They had no idea. While they chased titles and nameplates, I had been quietly buying the very ground beneath them. Tomorrow morning, everything will change. I arrived at the Golden Elm Bistro before sunrise. Sable, my manager, was already prepping the coffee bar. The meeting room's ready, she said, handing me a cup of freshly brewed coffee. I smiled, taking a sip. Sometimes the biggest deals happen where no one's looking. At exactly 9 a.m., Magnus Fairchild pushed open the glass door. Despite being one of New England's most powerful developers, he wore simple jeans and a navy sweater. That's what I liked about him. No flashy show, just results. Morning, Miss Winslow, he greeted warmly. Then a little louder. Could I get a cappuccino? I grinned, slipping behind the counter. It was the game we knew well. Me, the cheerful small business owner, and him, the casual customer. Nobody had any idea we were about to sign a deal worth tens of millions, right over coffee. The front door chimed again. I glanced up to see Celera striding in, leather briefcase in hand, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. Mr. Fairchild, she called out, clearly startled to find him here. I wasn't expecting you so early, she said. Magnus accepted his cappuccino from me with a nod and a warm smile. Ah, your cousin makes the best coffee in town. Would you care to join our meeting? Celera hesitated, eyes darting between us. Meeting, she asked. Yes, he said smoothly, gesturing toward the private meeting room at the back. Regarding the Ridge Valley Development Project. Shall we? I could see her mind spinning, trying to figure out why her most important client was having a meeting inside her cousin's little breakfast place. Still, her curiosity outweighed her skepticism, and she followed us. The room was cozy but professional. A sturdy oak table, comfortable chairs, soft ambient lighting. Only a small security camera tucked into the corner hinted that something bigger was about to happen. I'll need another witness, Magnus said, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase. Perhaps your cousin could assist. Solara's polished composure cracked for a split second. Oh no, she just runs the cafe. She doesn't need to get involved in legal matters, she said nervously. Magnus raised an eyebrow, his expression serious but calm. And just like that, the stage was set. The tiny cafe, the little breakfast place everyone laughed was about to become the place where real power was quietly shifting. On the contrary, she really needed to be at this meeting. I sat proudly at the head of the table, my hands folded neatly, and I watched Solara's face as she tried to understand what was happening. Her eyebrows were raised, and her mouth was slightly open. I could see that she was confused. "Actually, Celera," I said, my voice calm and confident, "you don't really need to be here. But since you are, you might as well watch something very interesting." Just as I said that, the front door of the cafe jingled. Grandpa and Uncle Oberon walked in together. They looked around, spotted Celera, and slowly drifted toward the back of the room, unsure of what was going on. "What's happening here?" Grandpa asked, his face serious and frowning. "Why is Mr. Fairchild meeting you in a cafe?" I thought meetings like this happen in big offices with lots of chairs and fancy tables. Before Celera could answer, Magnus stepped forward, walking smoothly across the room. He smiled politely and said, "Actually, I invited everyone here. It felt right to finish these papers where it all began." "Where did it begin?" Celera asked, her voice rising a little with curiosity. I opened my laptop and pressed a button. Instantly, a presentation appeared on the big screen behind me. The title slide shone brightly, Winslow Ridge Management Consolidation. Underneath, a map of the downtown area appeared, colorful and detailed. Many blocks and buildings were highlighted. They were all part of something much bigger than anyone had imagined. "Winslow Ridge Management," Grandpa murmured, his voice thin with surprise. "My company," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You might recognize a few other businesses too: Golden Elm Properties, Ridge Valley Estates, Summit Holdings." Celera sank slowly into a chair. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth hung open. Those are all the buildings we have been helping with insurance," she whispered. "The ones owned by Mr. Fairchild's investment groups?" "Not exactly," Magnus said, still calm and smiling. "Those buildings belong to your cousin. I just helped her quietly buy them over the years, step by step, without anyone noticing." Grandpa's face turned red. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he sputtered, "That's impossible. Lyra, she runs a little cafe. She couldn't possibly own all those buildings." I pulled out a thick folder from the table and placed it neatly in front of everyone. "The bistro," I said, "was just the beginning. When I bought this building 5 years ago, I saw a chance. Main Street was messy and cheap. Nobody else was looking closely. While people were busy teasing me about my small breakfast place, I was meeting investors, studying property values, and slowly building the biggest private real estate collection this town has ever seen." Celera leaned forward and grabbed the contract from the folder. Her fingers flipped through pages quickly. Her face went through so many expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally awe. This is worth hundreds of millions," she said, swallowing hard. "You own half of Ridge Valley?" "More than half," Magnus said with a small chuckle. "Your cousin has a special talent. She can see chances where everyone else only sees problems. Like buying an old, crumbling tavern and turning it into the start of an empire." Grandpa slumped into a chair. He looked pale and shocked. "Why didn't you tell us about all this?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked softly. "You were too busy thinking I was just wasting my time flipping pancakes. It was easier to let you think that while I built something big and important on my own." "But you wear an apron," Celera stammered, still trying to understand everything. "Yep," I said with a small smile. "I wear many things. Sometimes an apron, sometimes a business suit. But the important thing is, I never needed anyone else to tell me my worth. I always knew what I could do." Magnus picked up a pen and placed it carefully on top of the final contract. "Shall we make this official?" he asked, his voice full of ceremony. "Yes," I said. Magnus signed the contract with a flourish. And just like that, Winslow Ridge Management officially became the biggest property owner in Ridge Valley. "Congratulations," Magnus said, shaking my hand. "Though I will miss our secret investment meetings disguised as casual coffee chats." "The bistro is still here," I said, laughing softly. "But I might need a second floor soon. With all the new people curious about the cafe and the business, we'll need more space for everyone." Later that night, after the family had gone home, I sat alone in my office above the Golden Elm. The winter lights twinkled softly over the quiet streets below. My streets, my city, now belonged to me in more ways than one. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grandma. "Can we meet? Maybe over breakfast." I looked out over my cafe, smiling. "One plate, one cup, one deal at a time." "Sure," I texted back. "I know a great little spot downtown. The owner's doing really well these days, from what I hear. Sometimes success doesn't come in a fancy office or in designer clothes. Sometimes it wears an apron, pours coffee, and quietly buys the whole block. And sometimes the best way to show people you are strong isn't by proving them wrong. It's by proving yourself right. I closed my laptop with a soft snap and headed down the stairs. Tomorrow, the newspapers would tell the whole town about Winslow Ridge management. But tonight, I still had pancakes to serve. Because the very best deals, the ones that really change everything, don't happen in big marble boardrooms. They happen right here, over a warm plate of pancakes, a strong cappuccino, and knowing quietly that you can build something amazing with your own hands.